Welcome to the Charles Hosmer Morse Museum of American Art. Today we are going to explore World's Fairs, also known as World's Expos and Universal Expositions. So, what in the world is a World's Fair? Countries from all over the earth gather to show their greatest achievements in science, industry, and art. It's also an opportunity for them to share their unique cultures. Amazing ideas from all around the world gathered at the fairs. Ideas that we still see and use today. The telephone. The Statue of Liberty, first her arm in Philadelphia and then her head in Paris. The phonograph. The Eiffel Tower. The Ferris wheel. Dishwashers. Zippers. Moving walkways. Brownies. Campbell's soup. X-ray machines. Ice cream cones, the Space Needle, and of course, the light bulb. All of these were invented or popularized at World's Fairs. The first official World's Fair was in 1851 in London, the great exhibition of the works of industry of all nations. It lasted just over 5 months. Sir Henry Cole, a British inventor, and Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert, established the exhibition. The Crystal Palace, made from cast iron and glass, somewhat like a huge greenhouse, housed the greatest technological advances and artifacts of the time, from fax machines to telescopes to the largest diamond in the world. Writers Charles Darwin, Lewis Carroll, Charles Dickens, and Charlotte Bronte all attended the fair. As years go by, the fairs changed and evolved, reshaping their purpose. From 1800 to 1938, countries from around the world focused on industrialization through science, trade, technology, and inventions. From 1939 to 1987, the focus shifted to cultural exchange, with social progress, communication, and culture leading the way. By 1988, the fairs centered around nation branding, with national image, taking care of the earth, and becoming a global community, bringing countries from around the world together. This idea of nation branding continues today. The Morse Museum is very privileged to have artwork from 5 leading World's Fairs in its collection. The World's Columbian Exposition of 1893 in Chicago. The Exposition Universelle of 1900 in Paris. The Louisiana Purchase Exposition of 1904 in St. Louis. The Alaska Yukon Pacific Exposition of 1909 in Seattle. And the Panama Pacific International Exposition of 1915 in San Francisco. Louie Comfort Tiffany was one of the most creative and prolific designers of the late 19th century. His lifelong goal was the pursuit of beauty, which he established with a myriad of occupations. Known for his work of glass, Louie was also a painter, decorator, architect, and photographer. Early in his career, he designed the interiors of President Chester Arthur's White House, author Mark Twain's Connecticut home, and the chapel for the 1893 World's Fair. Nature was his muse, and color was his obsession. He found beauty in flowers like daffodils, guelder roses and wisteria, and pansies. in insects, spiders in cobwebs, and moths, in vegetables like corn and celery, in birds like parrots and peacocks. He was the master of working with glass, including blown glass, opalescent glass, lamps, mosaics, and windows. But his interest didn't stop there. He went on to create furniture, textiles, desk sets, jewelry, enamels, pottery, and so much more. With its comprehensive collection of Tiffany work, the Morse Museum uniquely documents that quest, which includes artwork exhibited at the World's Fairs in Chicago, Paris, St. Louis, San Francisco, and Seattle. So now it's time for you to go on a scavenger hunt to find some of the treasures that Louie Comfort Tiffany brought, or in one case, almost brought, to the World's Fairs. These are close-ups of the pieces of art. You'll explore our lamps and lighting department to find this unique fixture, our windows department to find where these flowers belong, our glass department for this beautiful arrangement of gladiola flowers, and finally, to the jewelry, enamels, and metalwork department for these two very special pieces. To begin, label a piece of paper 1 through 5 for each of the pieces of art we will be searching for. Leaving this tab open a new page and visit morsemuseum.org. Then, select our collection department. Followed by the highlights. Visit each specific section to locate your World's Fair artwork: glass, jewelry, enamels, and metalwork, lamps and lighting, and windows. Select a piece of artwork you are interested in learning more about. The caption below the artwork will give you lots of information, including its name, where it was exhibited, and at the very end of the caption, a very special number. This is called an accession number. This number helps the museum organize all of our art. When you find the piece of art you were searching for, write down the name of the artwork and its accession number. Now hit pause and keep this page open for reference. Go to the Highlights section of the Morse Museum webpage. Once you have found all 5 pieces, resume play for all of the answers. Our first piece of artwork is the Electra Leer. Featured in the Manufacturers and Liberal Arts building at the fair, the Electra Leer was part of the magnificent chapel designed by Tiffany. The Electra Leer brought as much beauty as it did light to the Romanesque interior. The chapel won 54 awards and had 1.4 million visitors. This was not called a chandelier because it was powered by more than 200 electric light bulbs, not candles. 10 feet tall and 8 feet wide, this monstrous light fixture weighs 1,000 pounds. Turtleback glass adorns its cast metal frame. This unique glass got its name because of the mold used to create it resembled a turtle shell. Let's visit the Corning Museum of Glass to see how glass is cast.
A mold has been made of a mixture of plaster and silica. The bottom has been impressed with a rectangular decorative pattern. It's placed in a kiln, and crushed glass in the form of chunks are placed inside the mold. Here, a high-quality optical lead glass is being used. The mold is filled to overflow because as the glass softens, it will take up less volume and settle downward into the mold. An electronic controller is adjusted to gradually heat the mold with the glass inside to a temperature of about 1400 degrees. Once the temperature has been reached, it takes about 2.5 or 3 hours for the fragments of glass to soften and fuse to each other and to gradually settle into the mold. As they do this, bubbles gradually rise to the surface and pop. The glass settles completely into the mold to fill all of the recesses and crevices. The kiln with the glass and the mold in it is very gradually cooled to room temperature over a period of about 12 to 14 hours. The mold material is brittle and can easily be broken away from the glass object. You can see that the upper surface is perfectly smooth. The lower surface, which has been in contact with the mold, takes on all of the shapes and contours of the lower part of the mold.
Number 2 is the summer panel from the Four Seasons window. Exhibited at the 1900 Paris World's Fair, this is the complete Four Seasons window. 2 grapevine borders, the 5 vessels across the bottom, the eagle crowning the top, and the 4 seasons in its center. After touring the window in Europe and the United States, Tiffany brought it back to his home, Laurelton Hall, where he broke it into 8 pieces. The border pieces went around a garden entrance to the home, while the 4 seasons found a cherished place in his living room. The 4 seasons window is considered the highest achievement in Tiffany glassmaking. There was no painting or enameling on the window. All of the beauty is contained in the glass, through confetti glass, plating, textured glass, and opalescent glass. Number 3 is the Peacock necklace. Charles Louis Tiffany was Louie's father. In 1837, Charles opened a fancy goods store, which would grow to become the Tiffany and Company empire and earn him the title King of the Diamonds. Here we see members of the Tiffany family, including Louie and his father Charles. After Charles passed away in 1902, Louie began creating jewelry, but his was very different in style than his father's. The 1904 Louisiana Purchase Exposition in St. Louis would be Louie's debut of his jewelry line, featuring 27 exquisite pieces, including these from the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. The necklace of grape leaves, and the hair ornament of Queen Anne's lace. While the peacock necklace was originally thought to be designed for the jewelry debut in 1904 fair, it was not exhibited until 1906 at the Société des Artistes Français in Paris. Fourth is the gladiola vase. Tiffany was inspired by nature. As we put the gladiola vase next to an image of real gladiolas, We can see that Tiffany and his craftsmen were masters of capturing the true beauty of the flower in glass. They achieved this realistic style using a technique to create paperweights, like these other glass works created by Tiffany Studios. Traditional paperweights are formed when intricate glass creations are encased in glass. Tiffany made the art form even more difficult by creating glass vases instead of traditional glass balls. Due to its complexity, many of these vases shattered in the process. As a result, very few of Tiffany's paperweights exist today. Here, the Corning Museum of Glass shows how paperweights are made.
This is Paul Stankard, one of the most celebrated glass artists in the world, whose specialty is botanical sculptures. Paperweights in this case. Here Paul is assembling small elements of a flower and heating the tips to build an entire blossom. He works at a torch using natural gas and oxygen, and he usually uses minuscule flames and extremely fine tweezers. Some parts are enclosed in crystal and sculpted with knives and other small tools. Here the composition is assembled on a hot plate. The various parts are brought to the proper location and joined using a hand torch. The paperweight is built in layers. Here, the pieces, the composition you just saw, have been encapsulated in clear glass. Another layer is about to be added. Here the entire mass of glass is reheated and blocked with a carbon tool to make it perfectly round. Here the paperweight has a bit of glass added to one end to make the flat bottom.
And finally, the Four Seasons Jewel Box. Does the top of this box look familiar? It was based on the same Four Seasons window exhibited at the 1900 Exposition Universelle in Paris. This box is made of gold and uses opals, sapphires, and amethysts to embellish it. The glasswork is created using an enameling process called cloisonné. Next, the Victoria and Albert Museums visits artists in Jaipur who demonstrate the cloisonné art process.
The goldsmith's workshop. First, the walls of the jewel's components are formed from strips of gold. They are laid out in position onto a waxed board. The components are then released and placed onto the gold sheet that will form their base. Flux is applied, as well as small slivers of solder. The parts are then soldered together. The excess gold sheet is snipped off, and the surfaces filed smooth and lightly polished. The component is now passed to the engraver, who secures it in shellac. And after marking out the design, engraves it in preparation for the enamel. The enameller first prepares the raw enamel by grinding it into a fine powder. It's then rinsed and mixed with water to form a paste. This paste is applied to the engraved fields. It's dried and then heated to melting point in a kiln. The enamel is sanded smooth and given a final firing to gloss the surface. The piece is cleaned in acid. Then soapy water, and the exposed gold walls are burnished. It's now ready for the next stage, gem setting.
Check your answers. Are you feeling inspired? It's your turn to create your own World's Fair masterpieces. Visit the museum shop to pick up your supplies. We can't wait to see you at the Morse.